This is a piece called Unter dem Lindenbaum by Ludwig Skedde, and I'll be talking about the linden tree later on in the video. But for now, welcome back. Before I begin, I want to thank all the people who have commented with thoughtful questions and responses to some of the challenges I've presented, relating to the translation as well as the nature of the Codex Oera Linda manuscript. I know I tend to nerd out on some of these topics, and I appreciate the prodding and the praise I've received. One of the hard parts about making these videos is coming up with ideas. There are so many facets to the history, both in story and on the outside of these collected writings, as well as within the language that we call Freias, to set it apart from Frisian. It's tough to narrow it down to a single subject and present aspects of the manuscript without overburdening the audience. So I play a long game, presenting different areas of focus as I see them, and slowly, over the course of several videos, filling in as much information as I can, packed into episodic additions to a playlist for each facet identified. When I ask, what is Codex Oera Linda, there are so many different ways of coming at that provocative question, it simply can't be answered all at once. Indeed, in many respects, there is as yet no clear answer, which is why our translation, Codex Oera Linda, is so important to the history of this material. The Oera Linda Foundation, link provided below, is providing the most comprehensive available reference catalog. We've created a useful citation system and are reviewing, researching, and revising the linguistic interpretations in several languages simultaneously. Our work, thus far, has broken new ground in the understanding of entire passages, and, even more importantly, uncovered and clarified etymological connections to place names, historical events, and commonplace words in modern languages, not only from the so-called Germanic realm. In the section we call The Unsociable Man, beginning on page 103.26 using the new citation system, several such connections can be found. On its own, the section conveys what I consider to be valuable lessons about perseverance and communal cooperation, two values that characterize Freie morality. A deeper truth can be discerned by looking at the story linguistically, foremost in the name of the Burgmaid, Trost. The word Trost in German, or Trost with a double O in Dutch, can be translated as consoling or comforting. The man in the tale comes to Trost in search of advice, something to comfort him and point him in the right direction in the face of disaster. What he receives are not words of sympathy, or even blame, but an unflinching and honest appraisal of his own contribution to his miserable predicament. One could say this is a form of Trost, in a tough love way, but it's not falscher Trost, as the German saying goes. Falscher Trost means prioritizing the comfort of the victim rather than emphasizing the causal factors that could have prevented, or could in the future help mitigate, disaster for an actor with full agency. Finding the righteous path requires a fair and truthful appraisal of the status quo ante, which Trost offers the unsociable man unrelentingly. Given the linguistic device of the name Trost for a Burgmaid unwilling to give falscher Trost, it is safe to consider this text a parable meant to instruct on several levels rather than a historical account. I will read the section in its entirety before talking about another etymological clue recently discovered about one of the terms used therein. But first, these stories are meant, as stated by Adela on page 005.04, to come from the mouths of the women and girls. In the past, I have asked for the help of women I know, and even hired voiceover actresses to do the readings. This is not always possible, so I apologize for failing to contribute to restoring an important tradition. Be that as it may, I'll read. And keep in mind the notion of falscher Trost as it relates to the context. Written by Apollonia, daughter of Ardela and Apol. The Unsociable Man, page 103.26. This was recorded on vellum, tale and answers as an example to other maids. An unsociable, stingy man came with a tale of woe to Trost, who was maid at Stavia. He said a storm had destroyed his house. He had prayed to Varalda, but Varalda had not lent any help. "Are you a true Freya?" Trost asked. "From father to father," the man answered. "Then," she said, "I will sow something in your mind, trusting that it may sprout, grow, and bear fruit." She went on, saying, "When Freya was a child, our mother stood naked and bare, unprotected from the rays of the sun. No one could she ask for help, nor was there anyone who could have lent her help. Then Varalda wrought in her conscience affinity and love, anxiety and fright. She looked around. Her sense of affinity chose the best option, and she sought refuge under the sheltering linden trees. But rain came, and with it the discomfort of getting wet. But she had seen how the water ran down the drooping leaves, so she made a roof with sloping sides. She built it of sticks, but a storm came and blew rain under the roof. She had seen that the bole of the tree provided lee. Thus she set to work and made a wall of sods and turfs, first on one side and then all round. The storm wind returned, raging yet more fiercely than before, and blew the roof away. But not once did she complain about the way of the world, or to Varalda. She made a roof of reed, and laid stones upon it. Having learned how painful it is to toil alone, she passed along to her children how and why she had done all these things. And the children wrought and thought together. In this way we came to have houses with porches, a lane, and covering linden trees to take up the rays of the sun. Eventually, they built a burg, and after that all other buildings. If your house was not strong enough, you should try to make the next one better. My house was strong enough, he said, but the rising water bore it up, and the storm wind did the rest. Where did your house stand, then? Trost asked. Along the Rhine, the man answered. Did it not stand on a knoll or a mound? Asked Trost. No, he said. My house stood lonely on the bank. I built it alone, but I could not make a mound there by myself. This I already knew, said Trost. The maidens have told me all about it. All your life you have detested people, fearing that you might have to give or do something for them. But one cannot get far with such an attitude, because Varalda, who is generous, turns away from the niggardly. Festa gave us this advice, and above the gates of all burgs it is carved in stone. If you seek unending gain, said Festa, then watch over your neighbors. Then teach your neighbors, and help them, for they will do the same unto you in return. Is this advice not good enough for you? I can offer you no better. The man reddened in shame, and he slouched away in silence. As I said, lessons on several levels, from the material to the moral to a meta-lesson about honesty and falscher Trost. To read it for yourself, you can order the upcoming hard copy of Codex Oera Linda, or just follow the link in the description to page 103.26 on the Oera Linda wiki. It's free and contains the original manuscript pages, as well as translations into Dutch, German, Spanish, Modern Frisian, and Old Norse, as well as our English translation and the translation by William Sandbach, all catalogued and interlinked for easy reference. There are also links to dictionaries and word studies, as well as some historical information and a link to the Oera Linda Studies blog for over a decade's worth of discussion and research into the manuscript. Another exciting detail in the section above is an etymological connection only recently discovered by Jan Ott between Freyas, English, and Hindi, a historically important language on the Indian subcontinent, spoken in the regions where the Geatman are said to have settled after their escape from Athens circa 1550 BCE. This is where I nerd out, because when I say exciting, some of you may consider that a bit of an overstatement. From Wikipedia. Veranda, as used in the United Kingdom and France, was brought by the British from India, Hindi word being baranada. While the exact origin of the word is unknown, scholars suggest that the word may have originated in India or may have been adopted from the Portuguese and then spread further to the British and French colonists. Ancient and medieval Indian texts on domestic architecture like Vastu Shastra use the word Alinda for this architectural feature. Now let's look at this paragraph from the section I read before in the original Freyas. Here, Trost is describing the experiences of Freya upon her birth and how she dealt with the difficulties of the weather. The Freya Bernvas stand us moder naked and blot, unbehot jens the strelum der sunna. Ninman mocht je Freya, and der wäre ninman, der je help mocht lena. Dagung veralda tu, en vrochten hieremut, nigung, en liafta, angost, en skrik. Hier sok rondom, hier nigung, kostet besta, en hier socht skul under vårenda linda. It's this last sentence that interests us here. Hierenigung kostet besta, and hier sochte skul under vårenda linda. We've translated under vårenda linda as under the sheltering linden trees. Vårenda means sheltering or offering shelter. A description of the linden tree on the Home and Garden website Nimvo reads, handsome, well-groomed and bountiful, the linden tree is characterized by its abundance of tiny cream to yellow clusters of flowers and large asymmetrical heart-shaped leaves with pointed tips and an average diameter of around 6 to 20 centimeters. As young saplings, linden trees have a slender, pyramidal shape and a smooth gray bark. As they age, they develop a broad crown that is often utilized for its ability to offer shade and shelter. In Europe, and especially in Germany, the Dorflinde, village linden, is a centrally located protected tree often surrounded by benches and trusses to lend support to ancient branches. It symbolizes home and safety, as well as serving as a meeting place and venue for celebrating life. It is a wonderful tree with very sweet-smelling flowers, often seen teeming with bees, and linden honey is one of the most aromatic sorts of honey, linden mead happening to be my favorite. That Freya should seek shelter under such a tree makes perfect sense in the story. The term Vårenda Linda is repeated further down in the section, where it reads, Assa denere vise sent vi an husse kämen, mit stoppbänkom en slecht en Vårenda Linda vid de zonnestrelum. So this documents that linden trees were planted around homes to offer protection from the sun, the same function as a veranda, and, coincidentally or not, seemingly the same word. There are also linden trees in India. In fact, the greatest diversity of the species can be found in Asia. So it is not a far-fetched notion to think that if the Geatmen settled in the Indus Valley, as described in the chapters beginning on pages 120.10 or 163.10, they would have planted linden trees before their houses, or if by that time they simply built sheltered terraces to serve the same function, it is possible they would have used the term varanda or even Oera Linda to describe them. Certainly the Hindi word baranada and later the word veranda, not to mention the term alinda used in Pali and Prakrit, a forerunner to modern Hindi, seem to suggest a connection that would be difficult to fake. Join me soon for more readings from Codex Oera Linda and a deepening of discussions around the language and the manuscript itself, as well as background information meant to enrich your experience of these fascinating stories.